Welcome to Dinosaur Island in the middle of Crystal Palace Park. This extraordinary spot was the first place that extinct animals were brought to life in the form of these sculptures. This is in SE20 and this is Penge. These are actually Penge's dinosaurs. This used to be Penge Common, so they should be secretly thought of as the Penge dinosaurs. I'd also like to emphasize that they are not only dinosaurs. There are 30 sculptures here. Of them, only 4 of the sculptures are actual dinosaurs. The rest of them are other kinds of animals. We have early amphibians that came out of the waters and were the first to live on land. We have crocodilians. We have flying reptiles like the pterosaurs. We've got marine reptiles, plesiosaurs. We have extinct mammals from the ice ages, including the giant ground sloth and the Irish elk or giant deer. We have early dawn mammals, the Anoplotherium and Paleotherium. So there's a whole assortment. All of these are called together the Crystal Palace dinosaurs, even though there are only 4 of the 30 sculptures are actual dinosaurs. This is a megalosaur. It's the first ever described dinosaur, and it was built by a visionary artist named Benjamin Waterhouse Hawkins. He worked with paleontologists who were experts on extinct animals and had been working with fossils, and Waterhouse Hawkins, as a natural history illustrator, took the information from the paleontologist and built around that what he thought these animals looked like in the flesh. Many things were correct about the way he pulled together these sculptures. A few things were not exactly correct, and we now know with more data and new interpretations about how animals work that the animals probably had a different stance, potentially a different skin texture, sometimes different details about where the horns were. They often looked really quite different in our reconstructions today. The sculptures themselves are sometimes classified as buildings. Inside the legs, they have supportive structures that are made out of metal pipe. There are bricks, tiles. There was hoop iron in the inside of the sculptures, all kinds of materials pulled together to build these extraordinary sculptures. The outside surface was cast with the Portland cement in sections that were put together. That now brings us to a situation where, as 160 some years later, we're trying to keep the sculptures together, we're trying to keep them intact, and conserving them is a little bit challenging, because they're a mixture of all different kinds of materials. So they're grade 1 listed buildings, even though they look like animals. The biggest ones are hollow on the inside and are really quite enormous. You could fit several people inside of them. One of them, the standing iguanodon, is very famous because in the time when they finished the building the site, they decided to do a big publicity event, and they put a table that came out of the mold from building the sculpture and had a dinner for about 25 invited dignitaries. That happened on New Year's Eve, 1853 to January 1st, 1854. The dinner and the dinosaur became one of the most renowned publicity events and one of the things that people know about this park and the sculptures in particular. The Crystal Palace dinosaurs have always been very popular. In Victorian times, the park was packed with visitors, and this was one of the highlights because nobody had ever seen anything like this. Waterhouse Hawkins was a very gifted illustrator and an artist, and he worked in a number of different media. After this project was finished, he went to the United States and was contracted to build a similar set of sculptures in Central Park. That project went forward for some time, but ran into a bit of a problem and ended up being destroyed and never completed And so this is the first Jurassic Park, the first reconstructions of extinct animals in place, and subsequently there have been many more of different kinds. Okay, so how did I get started in all of this? I'm a scientist. My background is in paleontology and evolutionary biology, and so the things that I think are amazing are the living world and how it came to be the way it is. I got involved in setting up the Friends of Crystal Palace Dinosaurs with a colleague who's a historian of science. When living in the area, we would come, like many of the visitors here, and look at these dinosaurs. But after many visits, we noticed that the sculptures themselves are not actually faring very well. They've lacked maintenance work over recent years, and the sculptures are starting to crumble. There are large cracks in the sculptures themselves. Because of the complex materials that they're made out of, doing the conservation work is a little bit of a tricky thing to do, and it requires specialist input. So we set out to form the community organization called Friends of Crystal Palace Dinosaurs, and our objective is to ensure that the sculptures are conserved. In order to do that, we want to make sure that the public understands all the reasons why these are very exciting sculptures, and we want to celebrate them. We want to make the Crystal Palace dinosaurs as famous as they possibly can, as celebrated around the world as possible. We've had great support from the council so far. We've had work done on 9 out of the 30 sculptures that are here. We need to continue to fundraise and raise awareness about the sculptures to make sure that the work is done on the remaining 21 sculptures that have not been conserved yet. There are cracks in the tails, the teeth, the toes, and even in the bodies of these fantastic sculptures that need to be worked on now.